All right. What is up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here with another GSD Mode podcast interview. Every single week, I interview top real estate professionals, top entrepreneurs, and straight up top badasses out there dominating their space. And today, you guys, got another epic, amazing, badass guest here on the show with us. So our guest today, guys, is a brokerage owner of first-class real estate franchise. He's actually a second-generation realtor, which we'll get into, all of this as we unpack the podcast. He got his start personally in real estate, doing a ton of REOs, then transitioned into being a VP of acquisitions on the real estate investment side, then transitioned into more regular traditional sales, crushed it, kicked ass there. And that just grew over time to now being a successful brokerage owner. He's also flipped over 100+ homes and is the host of the Freedom Chasers podcast, which you guys need to go check out, watch. I'll have a link below for all of this stuff. But I was just telling Tim before we jumped on here, I've been binging his podcast, man. It's been awesome. It's amazing. So really stoked and honored to have Tim Winfrey on the podcast. Welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me, dude. Like after that intro, I feel like I'm so much cooler than I actually am. But yeah, I mean, it sounds so cool when somebody else says it.
Yeah, I would get a guess sometimes like, dude, can you send me that recording so I can play that over for my wife? Yeah, exactly. No, but everything on the dude. I mean, you're crushing it, dude. And I mean, when they like today, people see the awards, see the accolades, but they don't see, and that's the hard part, like I used to, especially, earlier on when I was going through a lot of those struggle phases, I'd look at the top of the industry and people, that were kicking ass and put them on pedestals and thought they maybe had something I didn't have and, whatever. But what you don't see is the shitstorms that everybody goes through. I mean, I don't know one successful person in this business or another that hasn't been through insane shitstorms. I know we're going to unpack some of those, some of yours. But before we do that, man, I know that you're second generation realtor. So this might be kind of an obvious, answer to the question. But what led you into this industry in the first place? Like how this whole journey began in the first place?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, I mean, it was kind of obvious. So I mean, I was raised by a single father. So I mean, not only was he a realtor, but like he used to take us out on showings all the time because he didn't have a babysitter. So like I've been looking at houses my whole life. It was always something I was interested in. And my father's fairly successful, so it's like, oh, cool. I could just kind of ride his coattails essentially, and I could do okay, right? So that was kind of the original plan. Things evolved over time. Like, I think one of the best parts about being second generation is you get to learn from a lot of your parents' mistakes and things of that nature. Like one of the things that I think my dad could have done better is like having a good retirement plan and things of that nature. And he's like at that age now, and it's like, oh, all of a sudden we're supposed to be at the end and you're not ready for it, right? So it's cool that I get to see things like that. But I mean, it just kind of happened over time would be the simple answer to that question.
Yeah. So then, did I read that correctly? So 2015 was the year that you officially got licensed and started this as your career path.
A little bit. So, I mean, I was actually licensed in 2011, but at that time I was more doing blue collar work and I was doing BPO work on the side and I was doing some rentals and stuff like that. So, I mean, I wasn't really full time until 2015.
Okay. So then, you jump in, you get your start with REO. You guys are doing a ton of REO volume. One of the cool things about REO, at least for me, I don't know if this was your experience as well, but because of the volume that you do, and each asset manager can have different operation styles, like that is going through the great financial crisis and the volume of REO that we did. That's what really taught me the power of systems. And that's when I became obsessed over systems. Like, what were some of those big learning lessons and some of those foundations that REO really set in place for you?
Fantastic question. So as you just said, the systems were extremely important. Learning specifically how Fannie Mae wants things versus Freddie Mac versus PNC Bank, learning how to communicate with the asset manager in their language was a very important lesson I had to learn, because I don't tell them what I want to tell them the way that I want to tell them, I'm not going to get the price that I want. And guess who gets scored based on the BPO that they're doing, right? And it's like, just because they got a second or a third opinion BPO doesn't mean they should weigh their second or third opinion BPO guy over mine. So I need to be able to communicate that effectively. I think that was super important. And I think that has actually transferred over extremely well to your traditional sellers, because I'm able to communicate information to them that is very analytical driven. It's based on numbers, not on emotions. So I think that has helped a lot in the residential game as well.
Yeah, dude, when you were knocking out a high volume of BPOs, like it forces you to get damn good at valuing properties fast.
No kidding, dude. Like it's basically like breathing for me at this point. I've done so many BPOs and I've underwritten so many properties. Like I do not even have to think. Like I will just do it myself as a reflex.
Yeah. Are you still doing, REO at all today, or is there just not enough in to make it worthwhile to go after that yet in your market?
There's really not a ton. I just got a new assignment a couple weeks ago. I can tell you Illinois is #1 in the country in foreclosure starts. So I'm not in the wrong spot in terms of REO, but there's not a ton of volume yet. And the BPO volume is pretty low right now too, relative.
Yeah.
That's been.
So then, and I know I want to, after this question, circle back into your journey here, but for those, I mean, look, dude, the market's doing crazy things. Nobody has a crystal ball. We don't know where this is going. To me, it's probably a coin toss in the air, whether like it's either going to be nasty or they figure out how to plug these holes and kick the can down the road. But at some point, it's going to be nasty. What advice or maybe some top tips with your experience, so much experience in the REO world, would you give for those that, want to get into REO to position themselves if this thing takes a dive?
Yeah, I'd say there's no better time than now. If anybody needs help, they're probably looking right now, right? Because nobody's really going after REOs at the moment. So REO is a networking game. You need to get to meet people that know asset managers that can introduce you to them. I mean, it's really that simple. It's meet people, provide value to them, and they often reciprocate. So, I mean, it's not a crazy thing. It's just a numbers game. Meet as many people in the REO world as possible and try to provide value to them, and they'll often return the favor. I think if you're a newer agent, just picking up some BPOs is not a bad little side hustle. It teaches you how to pull comps. It teaches you how to make adjustments and things of that nature while still paying the bills. If you're in a decent sized market, you could probably make 6 figures without a ton of effort with BPOs. In terms of the way the market's going, like I'm totally in line with you. I don't know. It's a coin toss. It could be terrible, or it could be, they could patch the leak again, right? Which has been happening for a while. What I would say is, like, if you're going in the REO short sale direction, that's awesome, but I would still hedge my bets by connecting with a ton of investors. Like investors are multiple transactions per year. Who's going to buy when the market crashes? Investors are going to buy, professionals, right? So I'd be going after it from both angles, REO and investor. That's kind of where I'm putting a lot of my energy right now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, dude. I mean, especially with the rise of the amount of large investors that have jumped into the single family game, because I mean, it just wasn't a thing, dude. Well, I mean, I shouldn't say that. I mean, about 2011, 2012, it seemed to be at least the first time that I've seen it in my career. But then over the last few years, dude, it just, pedal to the metal, dude. And they're all prepping. You look at like BlackRock, dude. I mean, they've already raised 60 billion, dude, just sitting in an account waiting for the KPIs to get where they need to be to jump back in this game hard and swallowing up property.
Oh yeah, they're getting ready. That's for sure.
Yep. So then, okay, so you're doing REO. Then that starts to dry up a little bit, and then the same company that you're doing REO with is where you transition to VP of acquisitions, correct?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay, and then what then led you from going in that role, then to wanting to transition into traditional?
Great question. So the VP of acquisition role was great. What I didn't like about it was I made my bosses a ton of money, and like my split was only 10%. So I just looked at all the gross money that I was the driving force for. I found the properties, I fixed the properties, and then I passed it off to them, and I was like, oh, cool. So like I did almost everything, but I'm only picking up 10% of this. So I was just like, oh, I could do it myself, basically. I was like, why would I do this for 10% if I could get 100?
Yeah. Because sometimes when we're in that role, like maybe you're an agent on a team and you're like, well, man, I'm only getting 50% of commission. But then you leave and you realize, oh, fuck, dude. By the time I pay for all the support, all the systems, all the leads, and I got to figure out how to do this stuff. I mean, a lot of times we see them take a big dip in income, so, what were some of those, did you have some learning lessons there of, okay, like that maybe wasn't quite what you thought it was in that transition?
Oh yeah. Like anytime you think something like that, I feel like you're probably overconfident. And overconfidence could be good and bad. Like I like to tell people I'm often sliding into second when most people are still in the batter's box, like warming up. But the wonderful thing about sliding into second so quickly is you're already halfway there. So it's like, okay, I might as well finish this off. But yeah, I mean, in terms of growing pains, of course, like you don't anticipate the overhead that your boss has when you're an employee or something like that, or even if you're commission basis, you're not anticipating any of their costs. They have administrative support that you have that you're not anticipating, lead flow, things of that nature. So, I mean, it was definitely a harder turnaround than I thought it would be, but it was also the right time at the same time.
Okay. And then, you made that transition. Now we're to what, about 2017, 18 timeframe?
Yes,
And then I
sir.
know that you had a kind of a life event hit that then kind of forced you to take a, step back business wise. Walk us through what happened at that point.
Yeah, man. So, I mean, it's amazing how much one day could change your life entirely. So, I mean, basically, I'm just driving home from work one day. I catch somebody coming out of the corner of my eye, like, oh, this guy doesn't look like they're doing something that they're supposed to, but, I ignored it. And I was going 65 miles an hour. I was T-boned. I did a complete 180. And, my life has never been the change or never been the same really since then.
So then, walk us through that, man, because I know that, were you okay from that? Was it injuries? Was it, because I know that led to some other things too.
Yeah, so there were quite a few injuries. Most of them were based on post-concussion syndrome. So I had a concussion. I had some nerve damage in my left ear, which affects your ability to balance. Like I was bouncing into walls for literally 18 months. Just checking walls as I turned around the corner. And there were a number of other things. I was in physical therapy for like 18 months. It was a long, long thing.
Yeah, which, doing real estate out there trying to, whether it be helping buyers, sellers, finding deals, because I got to imagine, man, if you have a difficult walking with dizziness, were you able to drive during that time?
I had a extreme difficulty driving. So I've always struggled with anxiety for most of my life. And this was my third total car accident. So at that point, like it's soon as the day afterwards, like my brain literally just saw being inside of a car as a dangerous thing. Like anytime I was in a car, I was in a state of panic, essentially. So it was an hour and a half to and from work every day. Panic attack, straight up.
Yeah. So you had a little bit of time because of I guess the injuries that you probably physically couldn't drive, but then from there, which obviously would impact your business and make you have to take a step away from it. But then after that, then okay, maybe the dizziness is gone and you're able, physically able to, but then now you had so much anxiety because I think I heard correctly that it took you about a full year to be able to get comfortable back just driving again, correct?
Yeah. It took even longer than a year, to be completely honest. So, the accident happened in July of 2017. And I would say I was driving comfortably by early 2019.
Okay. Yeah.
So, a lot of what happened from the accident was making mental issues worse. So like immediately my ADD, like it just went times 10. So like I would be staring at a screen for like 30 minutes and I'd be trying to understand what it says and I wouldn't be able to comprehend anything. So the ADD got worse, the anxiety got worse, and that led to the depression getting like way worse.
Yeah. And then the anxiety of getting behind that wheel again, which all things, right? Impact all aspects of life, but there were things that you overcame. And with this, like I know that, and you mentioned that the car kind of just exacerbated some of these things that were already there. But man, so many people struggle with whether it be depression, whether it be anxiety, whether it be, fear, anxiety. I don't know if that's really kind of one and the same. And for different things, man. But being able to overcome those fears, it's like, I mean, dude, on a daily basis, and some weeks even multiple times a day. But I don't know if there's a day that goes by, at least when I'm having conversations with agents, where just fear of rejection doesn't come up, and about their fear of rejection, and they don't know how to overcome that. So, like, can you walk us through, for anybody that's struggling with those things? I mean, maybe they're mentally down, that maybe they are depressed, maybe they are suffering with a fear of whatever that fear may be. I know I just used rejection, call reluctance, because those are common ones. What did you do to overcome those? Because you didn't give up. I mean, obviously you're here and you're kicking ass in this industry.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I wish I had a more articulate answer. I mean, you really just have to plow through the fear, and the fear goes away eventually. It's like I was literally having a panic attack anytime I was in a car for 18 months, but I forced myself to get in that car every day anyways. And eventually the anxiety went away. Like, I am one of the least anxious people I know now, but I had to go through a hellish 18-month period in order to be where I am today. So the answer to your problem is to face it, no matter what it is. If it's a fear of rejection, if it's anxiety in general, that anxiety is there because you're suppressing something, most likely, or you're not aware of something that you just need to label correctly or something like that. But anything can be overcome. You just need to basically face it head on and say, hey, anxiety, we're going to tackle this issue right now. It's not going to be a problem again. And we'll figure out what the next problem is because something else is going to come up.
Yeah, no, I do. And I love that you bring it up and in that way as well. Because I mean, that's the true answer I think people really need. I mean, a lot of people are looking for a hack of like, okay, well, give me the mental exercise I can walk through and have this cured tomorrow. And maybe that works for some. But like, okay, for me with public speaking, dude, I had, I'm very introverted, as you know, and, so even to get up and be able to speak effectively in front of my team without fucking throwing up, like I joined Toastmasters for a year, and not to learn how to speak good, but just to get comfortable in front of, strangers and people. But then so at that point I started speaking a lot, forced myself to speak a lot. And God, it was about 15 years, because it was only within the last year that all of a sudden I showed up for a speaking gig. It was actually, what was it? Arkansas. First speaking gig, I stepped on that stage and I felt zero fucking nerves, zero fear, but I mean, it took I'd have to calculate it up, but I mean, at least over a decade. Yeah. And probably speaking on 1,000 stages, well, maybe not 1,000, that could be an overexample, but I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, for that. But it was just, and I honestly thought it would never go away. I was like, okay, like sometimes you might not be able to overcome those fears, but we just got to figure out how to face them regardless, and then eventually, again, it just clicked. It was crazy, but it's just that persistence and pushing through.
Yeah. And I think saying, like, just acknowledging that maybe this never will go away is important. It's like, hey, maybe this feeling's never going to go away, but I'm going to keep challenging myself and I'm going to keep confronting this no matter what.
Now, was that, how did that differ? Because I mean, we're talking fear and anxiety, and then you had the other element of depression, because that can be kind of a totally different beast. Maybe not. I don't know what it was like for you, but
it was.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, because again, I mean, I know there's a lot of people that are hurting, a lot of people that don't vocalize it.
For sure. So, I mean, depression during the period was harder to get over, but it was easier to get over acutely, if that makes sense. So once I got over it, I essentially got over it. Like, it's like, oh, problem solved. It didn't take 18 months like anxiety, but in the deepest, darkest hole of that 18-month period, it was a deep, deep depression. Like, people say that they were inches away from suicide all the time. And like, I was not only just inches away from suicide, I thought about it every day. I prayed about it. I wanted it to happen. I wasn't inches away. I wanted it to happen. Now, I had an 8-year-old daughter at the time, and my mother coincidentally left me when I was 8 years old. So like, my big hang up, the whole reason I never did it was because of that. It was like, how could I do that to my daughter? Right. How can I do that? Like, what does that even do to somebody? And it's also like one of those things. It's like, oh, It's like, how could I be such a dick to my family? Like they'd have to do all of this stuff. Like that's the only thing that stopped me from doing it, is the repercussions for other people. Like I was in such a deep, dark hole that I lost all will to live. Like I literally was going through the motions every day. Like I would wake up, I'd go to work, I'd have to go through 45 minutes of sweating my ass off on the way to work. And then I'd have to work all day, and then I'd come home and I'd have to go through that 45 minutes of hell again. And it was so brutal that like I gave up entirely. I was done, but
Yeah.
I couldn't do it myself.
Yeah. So a lot of that was, and I don't know if you had, depression I mean, I think we all experience depression at different times in our life and to one magnitude or another. But we're talking post-car accident.
Yep.
Right. And that's where that depression really started kicking in and just lost the will to live. Okay. So then you make the decision, okay, hey, I'm not going to take my life. I'm not going to be selfish. I'm not going to do that to my daughter. So then you have no choice but to then now face it. Like what were the steps that you started to take? Because you mentioned that, it was quicker to solve, like, like it was gone quickly once you figured out what that thing that you needed to do was.
Yeah, so what ended up happening is I ended up in the ER again in July of 2018. And when I left the ER, I actually went through your course, man. Like I took a week off and I just plowed through your 90-day mastery course in a week. And I was just like, you know what? Because prior to that, I was always commissioned, but there was always some base involved, right? Like I was always making 40 grand plus whatever on top of that. And I was like, you know what? The only way I'm going to be able to build the life that I want is if I do it myself. And like you kept saying the teacher appears when the student was ready, dude. Like I was so ready. So like it was really quick. Like for me, like depression is just like, it's a failure of your dopamine triggering, right? So what you need to do is you need to have goals and you need to accomplish them, because that's going to trigger dopamine. And that's like the main thing for my depression, is to also, eating healthy, being healthy in general, and things of that nature. But I focus on the dopamine. Like, am I setting goals? Am I accomplishing goals? Do I enjoy my life? Because those are all very clear yeses for me now, because I'm very intentional with my time.
Yeah. No, I love that, dude. I mean, it's a very, scientific explanation, but I mean, it makes it, dopamine's the molecule of more,
Mhm.
right. So it's accumulation, right. It's the, reward. It's, the motivate, like it's all of those things. So I can see how, that helps solve that and in such a quick fashion. All right, dude. Okay. So now, I mean, you went through this crazy experience. And then, okay, now you're good with anxiety, you're good with, everything else. Then, okay, now you get back into production, you're kicking ass again. What then led you to that decision, or at what point did you make the decision to, start your own brokerage?
Great question. So, I mean, I think a lot of it was boredom. I struggled with boredom a lot. I think a lot of entrepreneurs do. Like shiny objects show up. And it was one of those things where I was just like, oh, so I understand how to do this now. And it's like, I can do this forever, but that's not going to be a challenge. So maybe I should start looking for whatever's next in my career. And that's when I bought the brokerage. It was actually at your event in, I think it was 2021, in May in Clearwater. Ryan Finch was up on the stage and he's like, hey man, like I get paid to change people's lives. And I was like, that sounds like a fucking amazing job. Like I want that job. So that's when I bought the brokerage.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, and I didn't even know that until just the other day when you and I were talking. I was like, no shit, right? It's so crazy how things work out. Because I mean, Brian and I, because that was during COVID, right? Well, I mean, not that COVID's still not going on, but during kind of everything locked down, so we couldn't do, because historically we always do our coaching events here, or at least our in-person masterminds in here in Phoenix. But yeah, everything shut down. So we started looking at Florida, but because Florida is the only state in the country that's open for events, like that room was 50 grand for those days.
Wow.
Just for that room. So then Ryan Finch, like he was wanting to do an event for, all their first class agents. I was wanting to do an event. So we're like, well, dude, like, what if we just do a one-time combo event? We make it where everybody can gain value. So it's not like, pitching first class, not pitching, right. It's just any agent could attend, but let's just, combine them that way we could split the costs and make it where it was doable. But that was a badass event, dude. Clearwater was freaking dope.
Oh, dude, it was. It was 4 days too. It was like, oh,
Yeah.
wow. It was a long weekend, but it was amazing. And yeah, I mean, I love the way the GSD family and the first class family are kind of intermingled there too.
Yep. 100%, dude. So then, all right, man. So you started the brokerage in, you launched it. So that would have been, when was that? That was May 2021.
Thereabouts. July is when we launched, but yeah.
Oh, okay. So you launched it in July. What were some of the obstacles, challenges when it came to getting the brokerage off the ground? Because I mean, we have a lot of team leaders or just agents that are watching, listening to this, that are thinking, maybe down the road of starting their own brokerage, right? Because it's the leverage piece, dude. And people, if you want to, that's the biggest defining factor of wealth creation is what's the leverage opportunity?
Yes.
It's not the amount of hours worked. It's not the hustle. It's not the strategy, because all of those things you can apply to, selling one-to-one, business to consumer. But then when you get that leverage piece, right? So this next leverage piece, creates exponentially more opportunities for you. But that's, a lot of people have a struggle with it, dude, like transitioning from, being kind of a solopreneur or running a small operation to, brokerage, now trying to build an actual business.
Yeah, man, that's a fantastic question. So I was a Remax before, so I figured like no matter what happens, end of the day, I'm saving money over a 5-year period, no matter what. I didn't have a team. I never trained somebody at all before I bought the franchise. So, I mean, for me, it was just like, oh, I was looking to leave anyways, so I could save $1,200 a month. It's like, now I don't have to create a logo. I don't have to worry about all this other stuff. This is all taken care of for me. So like the first problem I ran into is I had 6 months where I need to figure out a way where I had a little bit more time, because I was wholesaling, I was fixing flipping, I was doing traditional listings on top of, like, it was just way too many things going on at once. So I was like, okay, what is my highest income producing activity? Let's just focus on that. Let's not do anything else. And then let's start bringing in new agents. And then you start hiring new agents and you tell them exactly what to do. And then you realize that like 95% of everything is mindset, right? So you have to figure out not only how to communicate with them, how to do something, but you need to tell them in a way that they will understand, which is different for everybody. And, unfortunately, when I first bought the franchise, I was like, yeah, I get 90% of real estate agent fail, but, I'm going to do way better than everybody else because I'm me. They didn't do it the way I did it. But, the statistics are the statistics for a reason. You can't, what did somebody say? They're like, you can't motivate somebody. You could only motivate them, right? So you could aid them in their motivation, but if they're not self-driven at all, they're not going to do what you tell them to do anyways. So, that was hard for me to get over. Because like I really like when he said that on stage, I was like, that's the best job in the world. How could there be a better job than changing other people's lives? And then putting all the effort into it and not seeing the change that you thought you would, like that was a hard emotional battle that I think a lot of brokerage owners and team leaders have to struggle with, because it seems so simple and so easy, but it's very hard from it.
Yeah. So it sounds like the big learning lesson there is, instead of trying to motivate people, let me just go out there and figure out a way to hire motivated people that are already motivated.
Basically, yeah, exactly. You find people that already have an idea. Yeah. Find people that are already motivated. That is definitely a better strategy than trying to motivate people, because that's a good way to drive yourself into the ground.
Yeah. All right, dude. So, I've got a lot more questions for you and kind of follow-up questions to all of this stuff too. But, I want to transition back into your own production, because I know that one of your specialties that really focuses is, when it comes to the sales side of thing, is on listings. Mm-hmm. And, we're in a market right now where at least most, or I shouldn't say most, about half the country, it isn't in a declining market. Market's still hot. Like a lot of people want listings right now, but we're in a listing inventory shortage kind of everywhere. Like what has worked and what is working really effectively for you to go out there and gain more listings?
So my favorite strategy for listings is wholesale leads. I think more agents should be taking advantage of motivated seller leads, because we could offer more solutions to their problem. So like this was a big change for me in the way I thought too, because when you have just one exit strategy for everybody, if I go into a house, if I go into an appointment and the only way I could help them is by listing their house, I only have one thing. I'm a salesperson, right? Where if I have 4 options to assist somebody in solving their problem, all I need to do is ask a lot of questions, figure out exactly what they want, why they want to do it, where they want to go, what they're going to do with the money, things of that nature. And as soon as I have everything dialed in, I just give them a tailor-made solution to their problem. And it could be listing the house, it could be a cash offer, it could be a subject to, it could be seller financing. It could be any one of those things, but I don't tell them what it is until I know what I think it should be, if that makes sense. So tell me everything. I'm a consultant. I'm not here to do anything but to solve your problem. And that made it a lot easier for me because I'm more of a marketing guy than a sales guy. I've gotten pretty solid at sales, but like I was never like, oh, I'm going to be like a hardcore closer. That's not my style. But if I give people options and they choose one, like I don't feel like I'm selling anything, but I am.
Yeah. Now that, I mean, and that's helping you, like that's helping you close once you're at the kitchen table, right? What though are you doing to get to the table?
A number of things. Oftentimes the simplest thing works the best. Like my favorite strategy to get motivated seller leads is to just post in yard sale groups every day. We just sold our last rehab, looking for a next one. I can literally get 20 to 30 leads a week. Now, most of them don't end up going anywhere, but that's a great way to find off-market properties. Over time, you'll get quite a few. And you get a lot of listing leads. Like, hey, I'm actually thinking of putting this on the market. It's like, okay, cool. What are you looking for? First question I always ask, what's the price you're looking for? If they're asking for market value, I'm not going to try to wholesale it. Like, I'm not going to go for the cash offer at all. So it's a matter of just asking questions and putting people in the right box, right? And figuring out what the best solution is for them. So, I mean, that was kind of a long-winded answer, but posting in yard sale groups is a great way to do it. Cold calling still works. You buy a motivated seller list. I like absentee owner lists and things of that nature. Out of state landlord lists are great for seller financing and stuff like that. Cold call it or hire a VA to cold call it. Like the beauty of the off market stuff is you don't need to be licensed to make those phone calls, right? You're coming in as a buyer. So you could hire somebody in the Philippines to do it for $4 or $5 an hour and they'll pound the phones for you.
So when it comes to absentee owner lists, you mentioned buy lists. I mean, I know that, okay, there's a bazillion companies that sell expireds, FSBO, short sale lists. But when it comes to absentee owner lists, you know, have you found a best kind of favorite place as far as getting good data?
So I'll throw 2 companies out there. They've both been guests on our show. So, I mean, Steve at Empower Solutions, Steve and Neville, I could highly recommend them. I've had a great experience working with them in terms of buying data and things like that. So like he'll actually look into what's working in your market because he has clients all over the country. He's like, okay, so over here, the tired landlord out of state list seems to be working pretty well. So we'll start you off with something like that. And he'll give you kind of a custom plan. There's this other guy, Nick, I think it's Lead Mining Pros, but he does data and he does texting and cold calling for you too. So these are all kind of one-stop shops. If you wanted to have it totally outsourced for you, these guys will do it for you. Or if you just want to buy the data, you could do it that way too.
Yeah. So, and then are these both specific to just this niche?
I'd say most of them work, or both of them work primarily with off-market wholesalers, but they both work with realtors too. Like I know Steve's got quite a few realtors. I don't know as much about Nick's system, but I know Steve targets a lot of realtors and like he has kind of a different approach for realtors than he would a wholesaler, right?
Okay. Okay, perfect. Yeah, because I mean so people that might be watching or listening to this might be like, well, you know, Tim, I don't have your deep pockets or experience. I don't want to get in the wholesaling game. I don't want to get in the flipping game. Okay, well then you can just go find an investor that you partner with, you know, and not even, you know, partner, I mean, just client side, you know, to bring them in on, you know, so you could go out there and duplicate this same strategy, even if you're not buying these like Tim is. And the reason why I just wanted to bring that up is just for anybody, because so often when we hear a great strategy, our minds by default will go to as to why that won't work for our situation or for our area. But there's usually always a way to go out there and make that work.
Oh, there definitely is. It's so easy to connect with investors nowadays. Like every single city has a real estate investor meetup of some kind. Like if it's a decent sized city, it is so easy to connect with investors. And the beauty of off-market stuff is if you have something and it's a deal, it is not hard to sell. If it's hard to sell, it's because you don't have a deal. It's really that simple. If you have a deal, you're going to have people knocking on the door for it. Like you literally just need to put it out there. So I wouldn't think about that. Like if you're thinking about what to say to the seller, you're going to have that objection no matter what. You might as well get over that fear. If you're thinking like, I don't know what to do once I have this under contract, you're going to figure it out, because if you have a deal, it's going to sell. If you don't have a deal, you're going to have to renegotiate. I mean, it's really that simple.
Yeah. So a good buddy of mine owns a iBuyer company.
Mm-hmm.
And, and he's a data freak, so but he was telling me that 45% of all those like instant cash iBuyer leads. So it's seller, I want an instant offer on my property. So 45% of those that do not accept those offers, which it's like right now, he was telling me they only have about a 5% acceptance rate because the market's, down. But he said 45% of those that don't accept that offer end up relisting traditionally with an agent in 6 months. So if you have that nurture game in place, I'm assuming that the wholesale, because it's essentially the same thing. I mean, these are just people that wanting to exit their property quick and not go through the hassle and headache of putting their house on the market. So I mean, wholesale, I buy, same shit, right? So I'm assuming a good contingent of these end up leading over time into traditional sales free as well.
Oh, absolutely. Without question. So, I mean, oftentimes it's just a matter of calling everybody once every couple weeks. Like, hey, just checking in on you. I sent you an offer. Like, what are things looking like? Like, these people tend to be in a motivated situation. Like, either their parents are going to a nursing home, or one of them recently passed away or something like that. And the reason why I love the question-based approach so much, instead of going in there with, oh, I want to get this one for cash, or, oh, I want to flip this house, or really just, I don't come in with a motive at all. I ask them questions and I figure out how to solve their problem, because 9 times out of 10, it is in their best interest to list their house. So if it is in their best interest, and if that is a possibility, that is what I'm going to recommend that they do. But what I need to find out first is I want to figure out why they don't want to list it. So when I tell them that they should list their house, I could conquer those objections before they even bring them to me. So it's like, okay, I get it. You don't want to list your house because you don't want people coming in and out, or you don't want to get prepped for market, or whatever that is. I could hit the objection right in the face before I even offer the solution, because I already know what the objection is.
So is that the lead-in question then? Is what prompted you to inquire about going the wholesaling route versus listing your home traditionally as a regular listing on the market? Something to those lines.
Something to those lines. I like to keep it fairly open-ended. Like, hey, if this went exactly how you wanted it to, tell me what that looks like and paint a picture for me. I want to know exactly what it looks like so that I could help you accomplish that goal. And then I'll dive deeper into the questions as it goes. But I love starting with super vague stuff, because everybody comes at you with a totally different answer, right? And then you're kind of on the defensive and you need to adjust to it. But I love like selling that way. I feel like the more off the cuff I am, the better I get over time.
Yeah. So then with question-based selling, which I mean, really, it's like, how can we go out there and, I mean, our job is to articulate we're the best guide to get them from where they're at to where they want to go. Well, how can we articulate that if we don't know what's really going on? So it's, it's so imperative, to ask the right questions. What do you find are some of, the most important questions that you want to get answers to that allow you to be able to go articulate what the best path is for you to be able to support and help them?
Great question. So, I mean, I think sales and copywriting in general, like it's just a general process of trying to take people from pain to pleasure. So figuring out what their pain points are and being able to butter those questions up in a way that they'll answer it without getting defensive is super important. So like, I think motivation is the number one thing. Like if you just write motivation down, like underline that 3 times and circle it. Like if you don't figure out what they're doing and why they want to do it, you failed the call, if you ask me. Like the motivation is the most important factor, because if I know why they want to do something, I could tell them why I am the solution for them, basically. But if I don't know their why, like I'm basically playing baseball in the dark, man. So I might as well swing, but like,
Yeah.
this is like everything for me. Like that's the most
Yeah.
important thing. And like, I want to know their motivation 3 different ways. So I look for 3 whys typically.
And those could vary, but you're going to keep peeling back the onion layers until you get 3.
Yep.
Maybe it's something with the house, maybe it's something with the area,
Mhm.
so maybe it's something with the house, maybe it's something with this, the location or drive, right? Like you're just peeling back those onion, well,
Mhm.
tell me more,
Exactly.
right? So
Tell
yeah,
me.
yeah.
Socratic questioning is just a gold mine. If you guys haven't figured that out, simply repeat what they just said back to them as a question. If you're ever stuck at a sales call, that is your solution. They will dive deeper by default, because if you just ask them what they just said to you, their brain is going to tell them, I didn't articulate this well enough, and they're going to go deeper. And I mean, Socratic questioning is just a gold mine.
Yeah, dude. And yeah, I mean, this is gold, dude. It's so important, man. And hopefully everybody that's watching and listening, I know, like as you said earlier, Tim, it's the most simple stuff that's the most effective.
Mhm.
But it all sales, pain and pleasure, right? Like, okay, they got a pain that they're experiencing. They want to get out of that pain and get to that pleasure. It doesn't matter if it's shoes, perfume, fucking car, real estate,
Yeah.
whatever it is. And it's, well, tell me, and what is it about your current living situation that isn't ideal, that's prompting you to consider thinking about potentially selling?
Mhm.
Because, and people might be like, agents that I'll get pushback of this, oh, they're just not motivated. I'm like, dude, if they were ecstatic with their home and ecstatic with their living situation, they wouldn't be inquiring. It's kind of like me going on a dating app,
Yeah.
and I'm married, but I go on a dating app. Maybe I don't move forward with a date, but I just go on there to see okay, well, there's probably something that's not right at home if I'm fucking inquiring on a dating app.
Most likely, yeah. So, I mean, what I think to be the easiest solution there is everybody's going to answer differently. So, just rephrasing the same question over and over is awesome. Like what you just said is like, what is it about your current situation that's not ideal? You could literally just flip that on its head. Like in a perfect world, what would you have at your house?
Yeah.
So it's the same question. It's just the opposite way of saying it. But the fact that you asked the same question twice, again, their brain is going to tell them that they're not telling you enough, so they're going to want to tell you more. And number 2, they're going to relate to one phrasing better, and they're going to answer that one in more detail because it connects with the way their brain waves are working more.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So then, when it comes to numbers, like conversions with this, and I know might be different if it's yard sale groups, or marketplace, or if you're hitting these, paid lists that you're getting, so if it's inbound versus outbound, but what are just some, because what I find is that, most people don't give things enough time.
Mhm.
It isn't even always, sometimes it's a strategy, but a lot of times it's not the strategy, just that they didn't give it enough time. They didn't have enough volume and a long enough time frame to even have a valid split test to know if this thing is even working. Right? It's like they stopped 3 feet short of gold. So, what would be some kind of, timelines and conversion ratios, of just general expectations? I mean, maybe, they may not convert at the same that you do because you're very skilled at this, but, just so then that way, okay, hey, I can gauge if I'm doing good and I know I'm giving enough time.
Absolutely. So if you're doing the yard sale thing, I like to do 39 posts a day. That's kind of the number for me. I have 3 accounts to do that with. So it's 13 accounts per day. I have a spreadsheet with all sorts of groups in my market and in other markets. If I do 39 posts a day, I usually get a listing or a wholesale deal per month. So it's essentially a deal per month. That's totally free. I like low overhead deals. if I'm doing a list that I'm buying, I tend to get a deal and a listing per 10,000 leads. So that's 2 transactions per 10,000 leads. And I believe it's like $1,000 for 10,000 leads. So that's a hell of an ROI if you ask me.
Well, in those 10,000 leads, that doesn't mean that you had 10,000 conversations.
Oh, not at all.
Right. Yeah, that's just a bot list, right?
Yeah, that is just a massive list of people that we are going to attack. So like I used to hit it from like 5 different layers. Like, okay, we're gonna make a lookalike audience. We're gonna hit them on Facebook. We're gonna text them. We're gonna call them. We're gonna do all of this stuff. Ultimately, what I found is cold calling seems to be the most effective. I don't like text blasting anymore. The TCPA Act scares the hell out of me. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, those conversion numbers have remained the same. So get somebody to call for you. I highly encourage that, especially if you're working off market stuff, because they don't need to be licensed, right? They're calling to inquire about buying a property. So I would pay somebody to do it, but cold calling works.
Now, when you go in there for the listing presentation, are you presenting all options at that time, or are you only presenting the option that sounds like fits their scenario best and that you recommend?
I'll recommend something, but I'll still leave it open-ended. So I will pick a box and like, based on what you just told me, you want to acquire X goal and you want to do that because Y, reason 1, Y, reason 2, Y, reason 3, and then you don't want to do pain 1, 2, 3. Am I following you correctly? Like people are going to say yes 100% of the time, right? The only time they're not going to say yes is if you weren't listening correctly. So like I write down goal, reason, and pain, and then I'd literally just put it on a bow at the end. Like, cool. Based on what you just told me, this is the solution I recommend to your problem. Does that sound like something that you want to move forward with? So it gives them an exit kind of, but it's a soft close at the same time. Because if they say yes, it's done. If they say no, like, okay, so what is the problem that you're having with this solution? And then I could just dive deeper into that because I could pivot whenever the hell I want to. It's like, okay, you just told me you don't like this solution because you don't want people going into your house. It's like, well, the solution to that is the market, like DuPage County has less than 1 month's supply right now. It's like, I could literally just be at your house 4 hours on a Saturday and I'll have it sold. I promise, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I like to keep it. I just try to solve their problem, man. I mean, it's really that simple.
Yeah, and that's all we're doing, right? We're just guides, dude. Yeah, right. Yeah, and yeah, to your point too of okay, they may say I don't want people through my house, but when they realize that, okay, hey, after analyzing all the different options and then what I would net, if I net 50 grand more, maybe it's worth going through the pain of having bodies to my house to net that extra 50 grand. Right?
I would say so. And usually that's usually the case. Like sometimes it's even more than that. But you'll also be surprised. Like sometimes if you're just solving somebody's problem and they just want to get rid of it. Like usually when I get a deal that's super below market, like I'll tell them what I think it's worth. Like, hey, I could list this for 250. You'll net this number. It's like, or I could give you 170. It's like, I like to roll my partners under the bus all the time. It's like, I don't use my own money for these deals. So they have to give me approval. This is the number I'm approved for. And you'd be surprised. Like people are making informed, educated decisions and they're still taking 80 grand less sometimes because they just don't want to deal with it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny, dude, because I mean, we do a very similar strategy, but just with we're not going like that. Our lead generation strategies totally differ, but when it comes to the listing presentation, it's like, okay, hey, here's what we get, quote unquote, testing the market. So a traditional listing, but based on my professional opinion, here's what you'd sell for, here's what the estimated net is. And then we'll bring in, 3 to 4 other investor offers from 3 or 4 other different investors, show what those nets are and just let them, hey, here's what we got going on, pick the price. But then from there, it's like, when you look at that, okay, when they're interviewing other agents, even though those investor offers may not work for them, most cases, and for me, in my experience, they don't, because I'm on the, these are traditional, people that are reaching out from traditional methods, but it's like, do we already brought something to the table that the other agents that are interviewing for that job didn't do, right? So we've already proven our worth at a much higher extent. It's like, I haven't even hired you yet. I'm already bringing you offers. Yeah, you haven't even hired me yet. And it just makes that conversion rate so high.
Yeah, and it immediately establishes you as an expert too, because let's face it, these people are talking to other people, right? So they're either talking to other wholesalers or talking to other agents. Most wholesalers suck. They don't know their numbers. They can't get any of the three numbers right. They can't get the as is, the repaired, or the as repaired value right. So that's what these people are dealing with on the wholesale side. On the agency side, they tend to be just thinking, hey, I'm going to list this house. That's my only solution. When you're like, hey, I have this platter, I'm like, let's figure out which of this platter suits with your taste buds, and we'll just give you exactly what you're looking for. You come across as a more educated person, even though you're really just educating them.
Yeah. So then, I believe that your market in Chicago is still, like, you guys haven't entered the decline phase yet, I don't believe. Where like Phoenix, we're down like 20% from the peak, right? So, because there's a lot of places in the Midwest, Northeast that are still, either staying steady or still pretty hot. But everybody's experiencing this massive transaction volume decline across the board. Have you noticed with this style of a strategy a slowdown? I mean, are you doing popping less of these deals in 2023 than you were in 2022?
I would say yes, without question. It's kind of difficult to gauge. I'd say like the counties are all a little bit different. I feel like Cook County is a little bit slower than something like DuPage County or really anything outside of Cook. But I mean, inventory is still historically low. Like in my
Yeah.
in the MRED MLS, it's less than 2 months. Like that's still, it's ridiculous. So, I mean, if you price correctly, your house is going to sell, and it's going to sell probably for the same price or higher. But what a lot of sellers are doing is they're outpricing themselves now, and then they get these long days on market, and then it just sits forever and it becomes a problem, right? The market, like last year, I felt a very, very clear slowdown in May when they had the first drops. Like that was like abrupt, like a punch in the gut. And like the next 6 months was just kind of this weird period. But like once New Year came around, like it felt like the market turned right back on.
Yep. Yep. Hell yeah, dude. So then, for those that want to personally get into, wholesaling and flipping, what are, for somebody that's totally green, wanting to get into that space, what are your top pieces of advice? Okay, like make sure you get these things right, make sure that you avoid these things. Not that they probably still won't have some learning lessons in there, but so they can hopefully not get crushed.
Oh yeah. That's a great question. So like the first thing I would love to say, I steal this from one of our guests all the time, but Kent Claudier, man, he said, ignorance on fire beats knowledge on ice. And that is just one of my favorite sayings in the world now. Because if you don't know anything about what you're doing, but you run faster and you run harder at it than somebody that knows everything, you're going to get further. You're simply going to learn more by failing and making mistakes than you would ever learn from a book. You could have a PhD in how to flip houses, but it doesn't matter if you've never put it to practice, right? So go out there and take action. The first thing you need to do if you're going to wholesale is you need to get a property under contract, right? From there, you could figure out the problems. I would advise that you use an attorney in your market. Every state is different in regards to wholesaling. Some states require licensing, some states don't. I'm not going to give you advice there. Get an attorney, make sure you're using the right contract. My state of Illinois requires licensure. It's considered a brokerage activity. You could do one per year. But we're the exception, not the norm. The most important thing is talking to people and trying to solve their problem. It's like if you're looking for win-win scenarios, you're going to win over a long time frame. In particular, if you're looking for win-win-win scenarios, like if you're playing the middleman role, the seller wins, the buyer wins, and you win, all of a sudden you have a repeat seller / buyer that you could do repeat business with. And these sellers, guess what? They still refer you if you buy their house, right? So you're building relationships that are long lasting. So I would focus on the relationship far more than the profit. It's like I kind of look at it like I'd rather make like 10 grand a deal than make a killing on one and make 50 grand. But if I make 50 grand, then I kind of screwed the seller and the buyer, right? It's like I'm just sitting in the middle and I'm sitting pretty at my 50K, But if I make 10 grand and the seller does well and they want to give my name out and the buyer does well, they might want to list the property with me. They'll use me the next time. It's like, that's far more valuable than trying to squeeze every little ounce of juice out of every lime. It's like, I'd rather just have a lot of limes personally.
Yeah. And I got to imagine in a potential vulnerable climate like this, speed is important so you don't get stuck. It's like, okay, if I can, make the quick 10 grand, but I'm able to freaking just unload it fast and just, turn these bad boys, man, I saw so many people get stuck in the great financial crisis. I mean, people that were like, I'd see driving Lambos around town, have 50, flips going on at once. And then boom, it was like overnight. Now they're fucking bankrupt, and bank took every one of those properties and lost the Lambo, and from hero to zero like overnight.
Yeah, man, time kills all deals. It's like that. I think that's the beauty of the wholesale situation, because I could have somebody call me, it could be a referral lead, and they're like, hey, I need to sell this house quick. They'll give me a number, and I'll just be like, yeah, that's not bad. And I'll make I've made 10 grand in 10 minutes before. Simply like, I'll call somebody else. And it's like, oh, cool, this is done already. It's like, I guess we should go take a look. But I mean, the paperwork's already done. So the cool thing about being in the middle is you kind of control the whole transaction. Like, I feel far more in control on the investing side than I do on the retail side, because on the retail side, I'm bringing information from the buyer's agent to the seller, and I have far less control. Whereas I'm playing the middleman, I literally control the whole transaction.
Yeah. So, I mean, are these primarily your focus right now is to wholesale, not to personally take them down and flip them yourself?
I cherry pick, obviously. So, I mean, we'll take the best ones. I tend to use private money still. I'm not the best saver in the world, but like we'll take the best ones. And I wholesaled a ton last year that ended up doing way better than I thought they would, like 30 grand better, because it was just the right timing. But hey, props to the buyer, man. Happy for him.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you guys there's 3 wins, everybody wins.
Exactly.
Well, I guess 4 wins with the buyer, the end final end buyer. All right. So then, well, and when you say, jump in and get started, I'm assuming that you're saying that with the assumption that our audience are real estate agents that have local market expertise, that know how to value properties as is versus repaired, like some of those basics.
Of course. Yeah. So, I mean, I assume your audience is mostly real estate agents.
Yeah, I wish they are.
Yeah. So since you're an agent, you probably have more experience than 95% of wholesalers already, and they're out there making money. So you being able to offer 2 solutions to the problem instead of just one immediately sets you apart from the pack. And the fact that you know your numbers, you should know your numbers if you're an agent, right? Also sets you apart from most wholesalers. Because I don't know how many wholesalers you've worked with. I know you're in Guru City down there, Arizona. All the wholesalers are from Arizona.
Yeah. I mean, we're inundated, dude, with all of it, man. We just seem to be like the sandbox of everything out here. So all prop tech gets started out here. Like, dude, we have communities with 3D printed homes being constructed right now. Really? Like, you go out there, it's just these freaking like robot, like scanner looking things. It's just, it's. But and for those of you that don't want to, go the wholesaling route, that want to focus like just on the sales business side of it, but then do something very similar. If you look at like what I'm doing versus what Tim's doing is, okay, I have the investors. Now they're going to go flip it. Now I get paid a commission, and my average commission is, above 10 grand on those deals usually, so I might not be getting the 50, 60 grand, spreads, but, I'm removing all risk and exposure, as long as, of course, I have the right disclosures and documentation and get with your, attorneys and your brokers and, on all of that. But then, I'm able to I just facilitate the deal, get paid the commission. Our average purchase price is about 500,000 here. And when you're getting 3% of that, well, on that, I might even be getting 6%, right? Bringing the buyer and the seller. And then with a lot of the investor clients, when they go to flip it, then I also get the list side. So a lot of times those turn into, 9% of, or 3 commissions if you want to count it that way, right? Sell, buy, and then another sell. So there's ways to, and the reason why I'm trying to explain this is, again, just trying to remove the thought of I can't do that for this reason, right?
Of course. So like you said, they could just do your model, essentially. If they have one or two buyers that are willing to pay cash, depending, they're going to want to pay 50 to 70% of market value in most markets, right? So, I mean, that's what your wholesale offer is going to be anyways. So it's essentially the same thing. You just have the buyer lined up already. I think it's an awesome approach because it differentiates you from your competition right away. And it allows you to ask more questions and find more motivations because you have more solutions. And like, that is like the number one thing for me. Like the more questions, like the more you talk at a sales consultation, I feel like the more likely you're going to talk yourself out of a sale.
Yeah.
Like I try to shut up, like just shut up, listen. Like if I look at the 80-20 rule, like if I'm doing more than 20% talking, I'm talking too much.
Yeah. Yep. 100%, dude. So then, on the circling back to the brokerage side, these strategies in particular, what we just been talking about, is this something that you're also then coaching your agents on and then getting your agents to bring deals and having those opportunities too? Or is it just, teaching them how to go out there and set this up on their own?
That's a great question. So, I mean, it's kind of it's a tough thing to just teach anybody, right? So, I mean, it was a natural evolution for me because I came from flipping houses and I came from the REO world and I came from all of this repair stuff. So when I'm starting projecting repairs, guess what? Like that just came as second nature to me. So it was a very simple and smooth transition. Like it made far more sense for me to be working with sellers like straight from the get-go than buyers because like my skill set
You did.
for them, right? So like why waste my time? Like it's going to be different. Like you still need to define those skill sets. You need to build them over time, So like it's hard for me to just teach any agent like, okay, like how to project repairs, how to project as is value. Like that's a far more complicated equation than, hey, go work with these buyers. So I haven't replaced myself in this aspect yet, but it's on my list of things to do. It's just, you're looking for a higher skilled employee there.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you see because you got a lot going on, dude. And we're going to talk about the podcast here in a minute, but we haven't even talked about that yet. But I mean, with wholesaling, flipping, doing all of that, plus still, some traditional sales, plus running the brokerage, plus where do you see yourself long term? I mean, is the focus long term growing the brokerage, or do you find yourself kind of more focused or pulled in one direction versus the other?
Yeah, man, that's a fantastic question. So I'll rip off Alex Hormozy's quote I heard the other day. So he's like, everybody loves the beginning of the race and everybody loves the end of the race, right? So when you're starting a new thing, you're starting a new strategy, it's nice, it's fun, and it's exciting. It's like, oh, cool, we're going to wholesale now. And then you get to the finish line and then you figured it out, right? It's like, okay, wholesaling is not as difficult as I thought it would be, but you didn't enjoy the race at all, is what I'm trying to say. You enjoyed starting, you enjoyed the finishing, you enjoyed the idea, you enjoyed cashing the checks, but you hated the whole middle. So like, I've kind of felt that with any real estate strategy that I've tried thus far. It's like, okay, the idea is fantastic. Winning the race is fantastic, but I don't love the race itself nearly as much. What I found is the podcast, like that is something that I love the race. Like I love every mile. Like I prefer the mile over the idea. I prefer the mile over conceptualization, because it's actually way better than I thought it would be. And I don't even care about the finish line. Like the finish line is not even in sight. It's not even in my mind. So to answer your question, it's like, I enjoy this race. I could run this race forever. And I do that more than anything I've ever done in real estate. So like the podcast is my long-term goal. And just like, I don't need to turn it into some massive money behemoth. But like, if I could make decent money just talking to people and connecting people with each other, trying to provide value to my guests and trying to provide value to the audience, like that's an amazing life. Like exactly what Ryan Finch said, like I'm just changing other people's lives and I'm just hanging out here and enjoying my time. Like I love the race, dude. Like, and I have never found anything in my life where I'm just like, I love doing this. Like I could do this forever. So the podcast is is kind of the thing that I could do forever. With real estate, I'm going to keep doing new things because I get bored easily, but I don't know if I'm ever going to find a strategy where I love the race as much in real estate, but we'll see. I'm going to keep trying shit.
Yeah. So, so then, speaking of the podcast, dude, what is it that you love so much about it? Like, and I mean, I'm sure that there can be, like, people ask me, like, with real estate, like, I'm like, dude, like, when I get asked to speak and whatever, because I'm kind of the opposite. We're like, I fucking love real estate, right? All things real estate. So, but I love podcasting too. But I'm like, dude, I can talk about fucking spreadsheets. Like, I get excited to go out, build fucking spreadsheets, and just like every element of it I enjoy. But there's some that I enjoy a hell of a lot more. So as far as the podcast, like, what are kind of those main things where that's just firing up that passion that you just love about it?
Yeah, I love this question. So, I mean, a lot of it is just the mental shifts, right? So we interview a lot of six-figure agents, and we interview a lot of multimillionaire investors, right? So I like to look at the way six-figure agents think versus a seven-figure person, and I could make my own conclusion based on the data that I have. And for me, it's almost a very clear thing. Like, the six-figure agent has mastered a skill set, but what they haven't mastered yet is the systems and the things of that nature in order to eliminate themselves from the business. Like, it's fairly clear, actually, like what the difference between somebody making six figures and seven figures is. It's systems. It's systems, and being able to eliminate yourself and to reduce your ego. That also seems to be a big thing, because everybody thinks they're far more important than they really are, right? Or, they might be really important, but they still need to fire themselves. So hire 4 people to replace yourself if you have to. It's important. So the mindset shifts. Like, for me, like, being in the same room with somebody that has this amazing idea and they've accomplished these things that are far beyond anything that I've ever done makes it a lot easier for me to believe that I can do it. So that just gives me proof of concept. Like, I've interviewed 230 people that have done absolutely astronomical things. Like, you had this awesome promo for me as I came in, but like, compared to my guest, dude, I'm like literally dog shit. So like, that has reframed the way that I think in so many ways. Like, just being able to communicate with them. Like, they say you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Like, I spend time with some amazing people every week. Like, I spend more time with guests than I do with almost anybody else. And that knowledge rubs off, dude. Like, it really rubs off. And it's not only that, but it's strategies and stuff too. But I think, like, mindset is 90% of the battle. Like, somebody asked me, what's the difference between your best guess and your worst guess? And I don't want to say anybody's a worst guess. Probably not the best way to say it, but essentially it's like what's going on between your ears. Like, that is the difference. Like, how you control your thought process is like 90% of the battle.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree more, dude. It's, and I'll tell people this too with my podcast. It's the best move I ever made, dude. Best decision I ever made. And it's not like, I don't even monetize. I don't even run ads. I mean, I guess I kind of promote my own boot camp coaching, my own coaching program, and so forth. Where if any of you that are watching or listening that want to go from that 6 figures to 7 figures, and you're missing out on those systems, that's the core of what my program's all about. So make sure to go check that out. But shameless plug.
I'm going to shamelessly plug that with you. Like, your course changed my life. It is one of the best investments anybody out there can make. So I highly encourage you to give it a look. Like, it's awesome. A to Z, if you're looking to start a team, start a brokerage, anything you want to do, everything is there. It's just, and you love spreadsheets and you love data so much more than I do. I get to just steal your shit. It was awesome.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. I mean, because I really should figure out a way to license it, not necessarily franchise it, but license it. Because I mean, it's my whole entire business in a box where, it's just plug and play. And then, you can tweak anything that you want to tweak, but then I'm there to support everybody on a daily basis throughout that whole journey for $199 a month. And I'm like, okay, I mean, number one, I got a 10x the price, but, number two, I think I'm going to license it, dude, kind of like, like you mentioned Hermosi, like what he did with Jim, the gym business. Yeah. I mean, cause essentially we're doing the same thing, with that. So, but anyway, yeah, I mean, again, not monetizing on it, but man, the relationships, you get to sit there and ask any questions selfishly and pick the brain of all these amazing people. And, the growth opportunities. It's so massive, dude. So then, and anybody watching, listening, it's Freedom Chasers Podcast. I'm going to have links below. So wherever you're watching or listening, we'll have links below. Definitely go check it out because it's badass. All right, dude. So a couple last questions for you. But before we jump into those, I know I already plugged the podcast name, and I'll have that link in there. But if anybody that's watching or listening wants to, continue following you, maybe they got a real estate deal, maybe they, have a referral for your market, maybe they want to join your brokerage if they're in your area, whatever that is, dude. Where's the best place to do that at?
So I do a ton of my marketing on Facebook. So I would say shoot me a Facebook message. m.me/TimNC23 is the direct link. Even if you just want to like spitball ideas, like marketing is a huge passion of mine. Like if you just want to talk about marketing ideas, I could talk hours with you. Like marketing is such a deep blue ocean that I just want to learn more about. So if you want to talk about marketing ideas, I will give you everything for free. I'd be happy to charge you if you want it done for you too. But like literally everything is free. I just love talking with people about ideas because like I feel like creativity is like really where I thrive. So
yeah. So when it comes to marketing, what in 2023, I mean, the game of marketing hasn't necessarily changed. Like you can go read, Breakthrough, Breakthrough, is Breakthrough Copywriting or Breakthrough, by Eugene Schwartz,
yeah.
Right? $500 little book, but I mean, that was written in what, the fucking 30s or 50s or, but those, are just as effective tactics as they are today. Other than, okay, you might've been in a newspaper ad, now today you're on a blog, or whatever. So, the game hasn't changed, but maybe slightly how you, like where the game shows up, so what are you finding works best and from a marketing perspective, whether that be platforms or overall strategy, like what is something like you would tell anybody attached to our industry, like, dude, like you need to be taking advantage of this?
Oh, that's a great question. So first off, I'm going to double tap what you just said because you're absolutely right. I just mentioned I was second generation, man. So when I was asking my dad about copy, like the copy that he was putting in newspapers in the 80s was literally the exact same copy I put on my Facebook ads. Nothing has changed in regards to copy in at least the last 40 years or so. But what has changed is the mechanism of delivery. So what I encourage everybody to do, first off, like authority marketing, being able to establish yourself as an authority in your market is something I try to do a lot of. And content-based marketing, getting in front of an avatar that I choose. So if you're a brand new agent, your avatar is going to be people local to your city, right? People in your general vicinity, like add 25 friends in the morning and add them in the PM. They could literally just be people that live in Crystal Lake, Illinois. And then if you consistently do short form content, because that's what people are looking at now, especially like on Facebook, if you do a reel a day, you're going to find an audience. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. Nobody has the consistency. So if you are intentional with the people you add to your audience every day and you give them valuable information that they're actively searching for daily, it's like you're creating an asset that compounds over time. People become attracted to you and they want to work with you before they even know who you are. It's like, that's what I'm huge on right now is authority marketing, building Facebook groups. Like you could do this in any way. Like I have a Chicago Realtor mastermind group, which establishes me as an authority as a realtor. You could make a real estate investing group, which will establish you as an authority as an investor. And you don't even need to be the person talking, Josh. You could literally just invite somebody else to talk every month. So you just host a meetup once a month and you're establishing yourself as an authority, and you don't even necessarily need to be one yet. If you have other people you can leverage, which, if you ask 10 people to speak for them, or if you ask 10 people to speak at an event, 2 of them are going to say yes, even if they don't know who the hell you are. So,
Yeah.
So positioning yourself as authority is far easier than I would ever think it was. Like just starting a mastermind group. Because I got a ton of Facebook groups at this point. Like just having a mastermind group. I had a BPO REO mastermind group I started like 5 years ago. There's like 1,000 people in there now. I literally did nothing to market it, but I have REO asset managers reach out to me because I'm an administrator of that group. And it's like, all I did was start a group. Like, that's all I did. So positioning yourself as an authority is something that I encourage everybody to do, whether it be for agents, like you could pick a niche, like, hey, I want to work with doctors that want to buy houses. Like, that's a pretty sweet niche, actually. Like, I know a lot of syndicators doing that. And the better you have an avatar, the better you could speak to your avatar. It's like, if you understand exactly what your avatar needs and you happen to be adding them to your friend list every day, guess what? Your wall is an advertisement that's free every day.
Yep. Yep. And for those of you that aren't in the marketing world that are watching and listening, Avatar is just another name. It's, you know, we're not talking about the movie. It's just another name. And the reason I bring that up is when I first heard Avatar, I'm like, fuck, the movie? Like,
Yeah.
what are we talking about here? Just like when the first time I heard Matrix in business, I was like, the fucking movie? And they're like, no, dude, like your KPIs, your numbers. I'm like, oh, you know, right? Like, so green I was, but it just means ideal client. So, you know, but obviously, and to your point, Tim, it's so important of, okay, if your ideal client is investors, you're going to be speaking different as that authority than you would if they're first time buyers, you know, right? Or, you know, short sales or, you know, whatever. Then, you know, because if you look at like, okay, the typical marketing flywheel for like video content and just any type of you know, content creation, you know, you got attention, you got awareness, you got authority, and then you've got accumulate, you know, when you, with that focus of authority, is it all just give, or, you know, are you sprinkling in lead magnets, or are you sprinkling in call to actions?
Great question. So on the front end, it was all give. Like, let's see how much we can give away. We did some lead magnets, but they were mostly free stuff. It's like, hey, we tried selling some things, but like the amazing thing, like if you think you know what your market wants and you never ask them, you probably don't, they probably don't want it, right? So like,
Yeah.
such a huge fan of the sell then build strategy. Like, I would much rather sell an idea that hasn't been built than try to build something and then sell it, because you'll find proof of concept a lot quicker. But to answer your question more specifically, I've been doing more and more asks, but I prefer to lean far heavier on the giving side. Obviously, I want to make some money from this, man. I've been building this for quite some time, so I don't want to do nothing.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure that no matter what, if somebody's paying me anything, I want to make sure that they're getting 10x the value. One of our first guests, he uses the term excessive value all the time. And I just love that term, because if you break down the word excessive, like that's more value than you want. Like, he's giving you more value than you need or even want. So I try to lean in towards giving excessive value. It's like, so if I ask for anything, I'm expecting that you get a 10x return. It's kind of my general rule of thumb.
Yeah, you do. I saw, I can't remember the name of the Facebook group, but you know, one of those big free Facebook groups, they have all these you know, thousands of realtors in, and where, you know, everybody goes in there and posts shit. But, you know, somebody had posted in there, you know, something along the lines of like, well, how do you give information to potential real estate clients, but then, you know, not give too much where then, you know, they don't see the value in using you and they just take that information, don't use you or use a competitor. And, you know, then they followed up with something like, you know, I was talking with an attorney that said, okay, I'll give my first 30 minutes for free. Then after that, I'll start charging. They're like, I'm thinking about doing something like that. I'm like, dude, I didn't go, you know, post and converse on it, but I'm like, that is the wrong thought process, dude. Yeah, right. It's like figure out a way to go out there and give more, better, valuable content than any of your other competitors, you know. But then from there, yeah, I mean, then, you know, if you as long as you can accumulate with other, you know, and again, more value, more lead magnets, yeah, right, developing that relationship, especially with something like real estate, because it's such a long sales cycle. You know, so it just takes a long time of developing that rapport, developing that connection, depending on where they're at in that sales cycle experience, you know. I don't know where I was really going with that other than just wanting to make that statement.
Dude, I'm in total alignment with you. So, I mean, it's one of those things that I'm sure you've struggled with more than I have. It's like, how much do I give away for free? How much do I charge for? Is there a wall where I'm just like, I'm not going to give this information away, but everything else is open book? And like the more I get into it, I don't want to pretend like I'm an expert or anything, but the more it just seems like if you give everything away for free, people are going to want to pay you. So like that just seems to be the easiest solution to me. It's like, okay, give away so much value that it's impossible to say no, right? It's like, oh, like this is stupid for me not to do this because you've helped me with this already. It's like the first clients that I started signing up through podcasts and through authority marketing were people that I gave free shit to 8 months ago. They're like, hey, when you gave me this Home Partners SOP, I made money.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it just compounds over time. Just continue to give value. That's an asset that's building, and you're building authority. You're building people that know, like, and trust you, man. There's
Yeah.
nothing valuable in that.
Yeah. And I mean, when it comes to information content, like I'll put it all out there. Now it's a little bit different with buyers and sellers. Like if I'm going out, if I'm an agent going to buyers and sellers, because they still need to utilize a real estate professional to make that transaction a possibility. Yeah. Right. But then from there, it's like, okay, well, if you have a I don't know, a coaching product, or even this kind of holds true for a team or a brokerage, as well, it's like, okay, I'm not giving everything for free. Not even close to everything for free. I'll talk about concepts and I give a lot away, a lot of information out there for free. But then there's, because it's most people, like we can talk about all the stuff that we're talking about today, but then it's, unless the step-by-step dedicated processes, and then you have the supportive materials to know when to implement, and you know the strategy of when and how to implement. And, I heard it one time from, I think, Dan Kennedy, that said, you tell people what to do, just not how to do it. And not saying that that's not a strategy I technically follow. But, I know that a lot of marketers, just tell people what to do, not how to do it.
Well, I'm willing to even give them the what and the how sometimes. I'll probably not give all of the how, but what I'm not going to give is the systems away.
Yeah.
So basically, like what your system is, like it's a beautifully designed system that anybody could buy and just plug into their business. It's a system more than anything, right? That's the value. So like ideas are free, the systems you got to pay for, but the systems are going to make the ideas turn into reality a lot quicker. But, but yeah, ideas are free. I'll do that for fun.
Yep. Hell yeah, dude. All right. So if Tim today, knowing everything you know now, could go back to Tim in 2015 or even 2011, I think, when you first got your license, but you were just kind of dabbling at that point. So you can choose to insert what that point in time. But anyway, Tim today could go back to, Tim, your earlier version of yourself, sit on a park bench, having a conversation with yourself, and give yourself a couple pieces of advice that, knowing what you know now today, you wished you would have known, that would have just fast forwarded this success trajectory. What would those couple of pieces of advice look like?
Okay, so you said a couple, so I'm going to keep it to two. Number one, I would heavily emphasize like how important what's going on between your ears is. It's like really your thought processes, the way you think, how you think, what you say to yourself in your head. There's really nothing more important than that. So find a filter, find coping mechanisms for whatever you need to find coping mechanisms for. Everybody's got to find something, right? Nobody's perfect. But find them, because they're out there. There's a solution to every single problem in the world. The more people I interview, the more obvious that becomes to me. But the way you control what's going on between your ears, there's nothing more important than that, because if you figure that out, you could do anything you want. The second thing I would say is network your ass off. I think realtors are not taught networking nearly as much as they should be. Like if you go to any real estate investor meetup, the first thing anybody's going to tell you is go meet a whole bunch of investors, right? Like that's the way to get in on real estate investing, is to meet a ton of real estate investors, but nobody tells that to real estate agents. It's like, I like to think, especially because of Mr. Ryan Finch, who you know very well, he likes to think in terms of 50 transactions at a time, which you could do by hiring an agent, or if you find one lender referral partner that is the right person, they might be worth 50 transactions a year. So I prefer to look at relationships that compound over time instead of your singular transactions that you'll get every 5 to 7 years. So I would rather have, 10 investors that buy 5 houses a year than really anything else, right? Because that just makes my job a lot easier. And there's my 50, right? So I would focus far more on relationships and on networking more than anything else. I would focus on investors personally, but I think your niche should be something that you care about, not something that Tim cares about. So pick a niche that you're passionate about and serve that community. Like one of the things that like you could pick anything. It's like I met a guy that started a running group. Like he just ran for fun. He started a group. Like now he's making money because he found friends to run with. It's really that simple. Find something that you love to do, invite other people into your world, and then you get people to know, like, and trust you, and they're just going to give you business. Like, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Like relationships over anything. Like that's the most important thing always.
Yeah. Yeah. Powerful stuff, man. And Tim, truly appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to be here, dude. This has been a lot of fun and an honor, my friend.
Absolutely, dude. Mutual. Like this is a bucket list item for me. So thank you for having me on, brother.
Yeah, no, it's been awesome, man. And those watching and listening, as always, we truly appreciate you being here. Truly appreciate all your support. Keep crushing it, keep kicking ass, and we will see you next time. Peace.
Peace.